Assalamualaikum. Welcome to the second lesson for Python. Thank you all of you who have been able to join on time. And I think we're going to give, maybe just about 5 minutes for the rest of the participants to join, and then we can start. Okay. I'm going to share my screen, share the slides, and then we can take it from there. Okay, so this is week 2 of the Coding with Python course, and I've tried to keep today's lesson as easy as the last lesson was. There's lots of little things that we will be working on, and I would appreciate it if you could listen first, and then I would give you some time to experiment with them, and we can solve any problems that you get along the way, okay? Okay, so here's the course outline again. Today we're going to be working with or learning about the different variables in Python, the different operators we can use. We'll be working with strings and numbers in more detail. And then we'll be saving and running scripts in Python. So for now, we've been working directly on the shell and getting all our outputs on the shell. So we want to be able to save the code that we've written. I'm leaving my contact and then these slides as well. Again, we'll be sharing the slides after the lesson. So you can get in touch with me if you fall into any problems. So we're going to talk about the different data types in Python. The first one is numbers. Now, the three main kinds of numbers include integer, floats, and complex numbers. There are also other number types in here. I didn't want to go into the details of those because then it would have been more of a maths lesson than it would have been a Python lesson. But these are the kind of numbers that most of us use in our daily lives and in our programming, careers and stuff. So these are represented as int, float, and complex. Integers can basically hold a value of any length, and the only limitation is on your end, on the machine, or on the amount of memory that is available to you to run Python. Or so whole numbers that do not have any decimals are called integers, basically. Okay, I will be working on some of the functions that are built into Python that we can apply onto integers, and then we're going to have a look at them. And we can convert between the different forms of numbers as well. So I will be showing you all of that in today's lesson. A float or a floating point number is essentially a decimal number. So I believe all of you have been working with decimals, and within Python, this is only accurate up to 15 decimal spaces. And after that, it rounds off the number. So it can't hold more than 15 decimal places in a Python program. And then the complex numbers. I don't know how many of you have worked with complex numbers. These are mostly used by mathematicians or let's say by physicists. I personally do not use them in any of the work that I do. But if we look at the math side of things, complex numbers are written with an I to represent the imaginary part. The only difference in Python is that instead of an I, you use a J to represent the imaginary part. The second data type is strings. So we've worked with strings in the last lesson as well, and it is simply a series of characters. So anything that is inside of single or double quotes is considered a string in Python. It gives you the flexibility that you can use the single quotes and the double quotes so that you can basically quote something inside of those quotes as well. So you can add quotes within strings as well, which is why it's it gives you the flexibility to be able to use the double quotes and the single quotes to represent your strings. Again, we will be going into detail of this as well. The third data type is lists. Now, lists are very important in our everyday lives as well, and we come across a lot of these in our coding world as well. So it's essentially a collection of items in a particular order. For example, the simplest form would maybe be a shopping list, or a list of books that you take to school every day, or anything essentially. So it's a collection of items and in a particular order. Now, lists in Python, these can include the alphabet. These can include digits. These can include, for example, the names of all the people in your family. And again, anything really. And the things do not need to be or have to be related. It is your choice if you want to make a list of related things or unrelated things. But essentially, Python allows you to put any and everything into a list, and it does not have to be related. So you can also do maybe the first two things in a list are, maybe the names of your friends. The second two things in your list are the ages. The third ones are maybe their favorite characters. The fourth one's something else about them. So it doesn't have to be related, or it can be related, but you can use a mix of alphabets and digits and everything other than special characters within your list. There's also different kinds of lists. There's editable and uneditable lists. We will be talking a little bit about them in the next lessons. So the fourth important data type in Python is dictionaries. So dictionaries are essentially kind of like lists, but instead of the numbers in the lists, you give a key value pair in a dictionary. So instead of the numbering, for example, if you were making a shopping list and you gave it a 1, 2, 3, and then the name of the thing in that you wanted to buy, you would give, instead of the 1s and 2s and 3s, you would give it a key. So for example, here is a dictionary by the name of fruits. The key is red and the value is tomato. And then another entry could be the key is green and the value is a cucumber. And then the key is brown and the value is a potato. So it gives you a little more flexibility to be able to connect values within a list, let's say. And you can access the values associated to any key. So you put in the keys as an index, and it would return the value to you. Again, I know this maybe sounds a little complicated right now, but it actually is not. And we will be going into details of how to create dictionaries in Python in the next lesson. We're going to move on to variables in Python. And then we're going to come back and look at numbers and strings in more detail. So we've already worked with assigning variables in the last lesson, and we used simple things to assign variables to, like an ABC or an XYZ. So it was just single, characters. But a variable is essentially a label that you give something. So you could have labeled it name, or you could have labeled it date, or anything. We made it an X and a Y or an A or a B just to, make it easier for us. But generally, when you're working with programs, it's good that you keep the variable name such that it kind of tells you what you have saved inside of it. So after a point in time, you might forget what A was. But if you named it, for example, date, you would remember by its name that it is supposed to hold the value of a date, whatever date it was, but it holds the value of a date. So essentially, they're like labels, and they could be a number. They could be made up of text, but there are some naming conventions that we follow kind of in Python to make it easier for us and to make it easier for Python to be able to differentiate between variable names and between its functions. Okay. And then you can change the value of a variable at any time within your program. So for example, if you assign a equals 20, and 2 lines down the code, you want to do a equals 10, so it's going to rewrite it. So it's not going to give you an error. It's simply going to erase the 20 and rewrite it as a 10. So reassign the new value to the same variable. And then it's going to remember the last value. So it's going to, for now, in Python's memory, the value 10 is saved. So it would not have any memory of what it was before that. It would simply assign it the new value, replace it. So like I said, there are some conventions and rules when we're naming variables. Most of them are simply to make our code more readable, and some are to avoid getting errors when we're running our code. So variable names can contain only letters, numbers, and underscores. They cannot contain any of the other special characters. The only special character that Python allows in variable names is underscores. So you can use a combination of letters, numbers, and underscores. And the name, it can start with a letter or an underscore, but it cannot start with a number. So the number can be in between, or it can end with a number, but it cannot start with a number. So for example, you can't do 3 underscore date, but you can do date underscore 3 or date 3, or simply, maybe replace the E with a 3. You have to remember that it cannot start with a number. The number can come in any other place, just not at the start. Also, spaces are not allowed. So within variable names, you cannot make use of spaces. Again, only letters, numbers, and underscores. So for example, you want to have 2 separate variables for someone's first name and last name. So you won't be able to write it as first space name equals whatever the name is, but you can write it as first underscore name equals, and then you save a value or a string to it, and then last underscore name. So that helps you remember what you would have or could have saved in the variable. It makes it readable because the underscore kind of acts like a space, and it doesn't give you an error. So these are some things that you need to remember when you're writing variable names. Also, I think we talked about this last time as well. So we avoid using Python keywords or function names as variable names. So there are certain functions that you have been using. For example, you use the print function a lot. So you cannot keep print as a variable name. Or for example, you use the random function. So you can't use random as a variable name. It might not give an error in some cases, but it would end up confusing you as well. And at times it would end up confusing Python as well. Also, it's best to keep the names short and descriptive. Again, this is to help you make it easier to read the code and also to actually write the code. So if you're keeping very long names, every time you need to type it out, it's going to be a hassle. So it's good to keep them short and descriptive again, so that you remember what's inside the variable. And it's best to use lowercase letters in the names. We'll be talking about this a little in the errors part as well. But yes, as I believe Karamat mentioned, I'm sorry if I'm mixing up names, but Python itself uses lowercase for all of the functions that are built into Python. And it kind of prefers users to use lowercase as well. So if you use uppercase in your variable names, it's not going to give you an error of any kind. But it's best to use lowercase because then it makes the code more readable again. And for example, if you wanted to, if you didn't have any other choice, if you couldn't think of another name, for example, for a variable and you wanted to name it print, so you know that there's already a function by the name of print and it's in lowercase because Python uses lowercase for all of its functions names. So if there's no other name that you can think of, you can write print in capitals. Or maybe, start it with a capital P and then the remaining in small or in lowercase letters. And then that you can use as a variable name because that would not mix up with what Python is already using as its print function. We're going to talk a bit about operators in Python. So there's many kinds of basic operators. There's more after that as well. In fact, I did not leave out the link in this diagram because this is actually a very nice website that you can follow if you ever get stuck with Python. And it goes from the very basics to a lot of detail. So you can use it even when you're just starting up with your Python, or if you run into any errors at a later stage. This is a very good website that you can, kind of go back to, and there's forums there and there's discussions going on there, and they'll have lots of material just explaining how different functions and different modules and different operators, for example, work. So there's arithmetic operators, comparison operators, assignment operators, and logical operators, which we're going to be talking about. Then there are also bitwise operators, some special operators, and membership operators that we are not going to be talking about. We might, if things go as planned, we might go on with a higher level course of Python, and then we can discuss these. But like for myself as well, I have never had to use the last three kind of operators, in the time that I've spent coding. So the basic arithmetic operators, we've worked with all of these. I believe almost all. Yes, we worked with all of these. We use these multiple times. The basic arithmetic operators are like the plus sign. It's basically adding two numbers or operands like x and y. The subtract sign, the multiply, the divide. And then there's the divide floor. And I'm sorry, but in the example, it's kind of because I copied this table out of somewhere, as in I took a screenshot and added it here. But in the example, they missed out one of the slashes. So essentially what this does is we use the modulus function the last week. And what it did was it basically returned the remainder. The same way the floor function or the divide floor returns the actual answer to that minus the remainder. Okay, so for example, if we did, let me try and open up my So let's say we do 20 divided by 3. This gives us 6.667. If we did 20 percentage sign or modulus and then 3, what it gives us is the remainder essentially, because 3 times 6 is 18, and then 20 minus 18 is 2, which is the remainder. Okay, and if we do a floor, so this and 3, what it gives us is 6. So it gave us the whole number that we would get if we divided 20 by 3. So instead of the, let's say, the float or the number with the decimals, the floor function gives us the whole number and the modulus function gives us the remainder. So we can use a combination of these to display to the user, for example, that if they divided 20 by 3, they would get 6, remainder 2. So let's do another example. Let's do 30 divided by 4. It gives you a 7.5 if you directly divide it. Okay. If you want to find out what whole number it got you if you divided it, you do a division floor, which is essentially a double slash instead of a single slash. Okay. And if you want to find out what the remainder was, so when you divided 30 by 4, you got a 7, and then the remainder was 2. So essentially what this means is that 4 times 7 is 28, and then 30 minus 28 is 2. So okay, so this is how you can use it in a combination. So for example, I used it in a print statement. So we wrote, if you divide 30 by 4, you will get a 7, which is 30 floor sign and then the 4, and a remainder 2. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the slides now. So we did the divide and the modulus, and we experimented a bit with the exponential last time as well. So it essentially creates, for example, if you want to do a square or a cube or raised to the power 10 or anything essentially. So you can use a double asterisk instead of a single one to raise it to that power. So any number raised to any power. Okay, so the next is the comparison operators. So the comparison operators, again, we will be using them in more detail when we're working with conditions or conditional statements. But just to give you an overview of what they are, so the basic comparison operators used are a double equals to sign, which essentially means that you're checking two variables. So if you saved value into one or the other variable, and then you want to check if the two variables have the same value or hold the same value or different values, you can use this double equals to check for it. So you use a single equals to assign a value. Remember that, please. And you use a double equals to sign to check or compare the value. Okay, the same way for mathematical calculations or with numbers, you can check if a number is greater than or less than, or greater than equal to means that it checks if it's either greater than or equal to. Okay, so if any of those parts are true, it's going to return true. And then the same as less than equal to. So it checks if a number is less than the number or it's equal to the number. So either way, even if it's less than or if it's equal to, it's going to return true. And then the last one is not equals to. So the same way as you compare two numbers, or you can also use this in fact to compare strings, and we will be doing that. So you use the double equals to sign to check if they're equal to one another. You can use the exclamation mark and the equal to sign, which means not equals to, which is the sign that is generally used in, let's say, all of the languages that I've come across recently as a not equals to sign. So this checks that, for example, x is not equals to y. And if that is true, it's going to return true. Okay, so for example, if x was a 10 and y was a 20, so x is not equal to y is going to return true, and x equals to y is going to return false. Then there's the assignment operators. So like I mentioned earlier, the simple equals to sign is used when we want to assign a value to a variable. Then there's also some shortcuts that we can use. So if we want to, instead of writing x equals x plus y, what we can simply write it as is x plus equals y. Now, I personally avoid using these because I believe that these don't really, make the code any smaller. It's just maybe one or two characters of a difference. But yes, the more experienced programmers do use it. Okay, so I generally stick with the simple x equals x plus y. I would stick with that because it's easier to check back. It's easier to, keep in memory. It's more logical if someone else is trying to read your code as well. But if you wanted a shortcut to it, you can use it as x plus equals y. The same way, x minus equals y would be the same as x equals x minus y. X multiply equals y would be equal to x equals x multiplied by y. Now, these are things that, like Muhammad Azam asked in the last lesson as well, these are things that, yes, you need to remember, which is why, again, I don't like using these personally, but you can use them if you like. It's just an extra syntax, really, to remember. And once you're using them regularly, it's going to stay there in your memory. But if you don't use these regularly, or if you don't code regularly, or you're not working with a lot of numbers, you will probably forget these and have to come back to these. You will have these on record in these slides. So if you ever want to experiment with them, you are more than welcome to. We will not be using these kinds of assignment operators in any of our exercises that we do. Okay, but yes, so these are essentially the same operators. You're doing the same mathematical functions: subtraction, addition, multiplication, division, floor, modulus, exponentials. Okay, but you're just using different symbols to do it, so it kind of lessens the code. And then there's the logical operators. Now we will be working with these quite a bit when we are working with conditions. And we will be doing that in the next lesson, I believe. Yes. So there are different logical operators within Python, and these are used in almost all the languages. And these are and, or not. So for example, if you want to check whether, A equals B and X equals Y. So it's going to return true only if both of them are true. So if A equals B was true and X equals Y was true, it's only going to return true then, the whole and function or operator, really, not a function. The same way for or, it's only going to return true if one or both of them are true. And if neither of them are true, then it's not going to return true. Again, this is just to, put it out there that this is something that exists and can be used. Please do not worry if you feel that this confuses you at the moment, because we will be experimenting a lot with these when we'll be working with conditional statements, and then you'll be able to understand perfectly how these work. Okay. The last one is the not operator. So this returns true if whatever you're checking is false. So an example is not X. So if it's not equal to a certain variable, or if it's not equal to a certain string, it's going to return false. Sorry, true. Okay, so we're back to numbers in Python. This is the last slide that we did on numbers in Python as well. And now I'm going to look at some of the functions that you can do on the numbers, okay? So a few of these functions include, for example, an absolute number, which gives you the absolute or the actual value of the whole number that is within it. So it's going to remove the sign. So if your number was a -12 or it was a -100, it's going to remove the sign and just give you the actual number. So the absolute function, or ABS, gives you the actual whole number without the sign and without the decimal. So it's going to take out the decimal spaces, it's going to take out the signs and just give you the actual whole number. And the whole number is essentially called the integer, as Muhammad Azam asked earlier as well. So an integer is essentially a whole number, okay? It could have a negative or a positive sign. A positive sign, like in maths, we don't write. A negative sign, we do write. But an absolute value gives you the number without the sign. So the whole number without the sign. Then the second function is power. Now you can do this also with the double asterisks, or you can do it like this. It depends which you're more comfortable with, okay? So we use the double asterisks to, a basic number and then assign it a power, and it gives you the answer. The same way you can use the power function to do that. So it takes in two inputs, the first number and then the power that you want to raise it to. So for example, 2 raised to the power 3 is 8, 10 raised to the power 3 is 1000. Okay. And this would again give you the same answer as it would with the double asterisks. Then rounding off numbers. So there's two ways to round off numbers, okay? It uses the same function essentially, but you can either give the function just one input, or you can give it two inputs. So if you give it just one input, just the number, and you don't tell it how many digits you want to round it off to, it's going to automatically round it off to the nearest integer. So it can round up or round down, depending on, again, the same rules as we use in maths, but it is going to give you a value of the integer without any decimals. And if you want to, for example, you have a number that has 5, 6, 7 decimal spaces, and you want to round it off to 2 decimal spaces or a single decimal space, Then you can use the same round function, give it the number, and tell it how many digits you would want to round it off to. Okay. Again, I will be doing this in the shell, and then if we run into any errors, we can solve those there. Okay. Then there's the minimum and the maximum. So essentially what you do is you give it a list of numbers, let's say, within the arguments. So the function is min, and then within brackets, you write, let's say 5 numbers, 6 numbers, and it's going to return you the smallest of the numbers. Okay. And it is able to recognize positive numbers and negative numbers as well. So whatever you write in there, in whatever order you write it, it's going to return you the minimum value from all of those. The same way the max function works. Okay. So you can give it a list of numbers, and what it does is it returns the maximum number out of them. So the number with the highest value. Then there's some more, and after this, we're going to go to the shell and experiment with these. So there's a type function, which basically takes in one argument and returns which class it belongs to. So like we said, numbers can be integers, float, or complex numbers. Again, we're not going to go into the detail of complex numbers because not many people use it. But if you think you will be using it later on, you can always get in touch with me separately, and we can do a little session on complex numbers specifically. But type essentially returns which class it belongs to. Okay, so if it tells you if it's an integer, or it tells you if it's a float, or it tells you if it's a complex number. Then you can convert between these different types as well. So if you have an integer and you want to convert it into a float, or if you have a float and you want to convert it into an integer, you simply use the int and the float functions. Now the int and the float functions will not work with complex numbers, because complex numbers are, like the name says, they are complex, and they're basically made up of 2 parts. So it's difficult for these int and float functions in Python to be able to convert a complex number into an int or a float. But you can use the complex function to convert any numeric type into a complex number. Okay, so you can't convert a complex number into an integer or a float, but you can do it the other way around. So if you have an integer or a float and you want to convert it to a complex number, you can use the complex function and it would convert it. Okay, absolute, this is the same one as in the last slide. It returns the absolute value of a number. Then log, you can also use this as log 10, or the different logs that are out there. The most common one is a log, or a log 2, or a log 10 essentially. So this returns a natural logarithm of a number. Then round, again, we went over this in the last one as well, and I've added it here as well. So there's 2 ways that you can use round: simply to round it off directly, or you can tell it, how many digits you want to round it off to. And then there's the square root. So we know how to find the square of a number. So essentially a double asterisk, or you use the power function. But if you want to find the square root of a number, this is the function that you use. Again, there are a lot more functions. It is impossible for me to, write down all the functions that you could possibly use with numbers over here. But these are some of the basic functions, just to give you an idea. And once you start working with them, you can easily find out again, the different functions, others that may be, of use to you. You can simply find them out using Google. There's lots of online resources. There's even some online books uh, on Python that are available. In fact, for those of you on Google Classroom, because someone asked, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name again, but someone asked about books, and I did share the names of 3 books that I actually found online, and you can download them from there, and you can also print them out if you like. I am using printouts of the same books, in fact, because I'm a little old school, so it's still easier to read it from an actual book rather than reading it online all the time. Okay, so we're going to experiment with some of these in the shell now, and if you can do this on your own systems as well, you don't need to share the screen, but just experiment with these and then we can see how it goes. Okay, so let's say again, it's easier to use just an X or a Y or an A, B, C. So I'm going to stick with an X. I'm going to assign it a new value. Let's say X is 12, Y is 15.75. Okay. And now if you want to find out what type these are, what we can simply do is, okay, so there's different ways to do this. Let me see if this works in idle. Okay, it doesn't. So what we want to do is, so in different shells, it works a little differently, and there's multiple ways in which you can call functions. So you can also do x dot type and then close brackets, and it's going to give you the class, or like it did not return a value here. It actually gave an error, which is why we did type, and then within brackets, we wrote the name of the variable. The same way we're going to do it for y. So you see that it returns an integer, class int for x, and class float for y. So we did not tell Python ourselves that we were assigning it an int or a float value. But based on the actual value, it was able to determine on its own what it was. So this is something that gives it an upper hand over a lot of other languages, because in a lot of other languages, you actually need to tell the compiler, or you need to write in your code what kind of a data type it is. Okay, so now if we want to convert our integer, which is x, into a float, let's see what it would return. So it's automatically assigned a decimal place to it. And since there's nothing there, it's going to give it a 0. But it's still assigned a decimal because a float would always contain a decimal. So when we convert an integer to a float using the float function, what it does is it adds a decimal and then a 0 to it, because essentially there's no value in front of it. Okay, the same way we can convert a float to an integer. How do we do that? Int y. So what this did was, if you notice up here, the value we stored in y was 15.75. It is not going to round it off. It does not round it off and it converts it into an integer. It simply, removes anything that was after the decimal and keeps the whole number. So it does not if you were working with maths and if you wanted to round it off, you would probably round it off to a 16, which is why I use this number, so that you know how it converts. So we would generally round this off to a 16 and write this as a 16. But what Python does is that it does not see what there was after the decimal. It simply just removes whatever it was and gives you the whole number. Okay? So the same way, we're going to try the absolute function on the float because the integer is already an absolute value. Okay? So let's do the absolute function on a float. So ABS and then Y. Okay, no. It's supposed to give us back a 15 only. I don't know what just happened. Sorry about that. Okay, I have to look into this, why this happened. Because an absolute is supposed to give you the number without its decimal places. This I will get back to you maybe after the break that we're supposed to take in a bit, and then we'll see why this happened. Okay, so now we've used the round function and it's returned a 16 because now it's using it as, any mathematician would use it. So it's looking at the value after the decimal. If it's 5 or greater than 5, it's going to round it up. If it was less, it was going to round it down. Okay. The same way, if you want to, round it off to, let's say, 1 decimal space. So what we do is y and then 1. So what it did was it rounded it off to 15.8. So it rounded it off to 1 decimal space. So it looked at the value of the second decimal space, which is a 5. So it rounded up and made it a 15.8 instead of 15.7. Okay. The same way you can use the square root function, I believe, because you may notice when I write the names of functions, it changes the color for it. But when I'm writing it for square root, it's not changing it. The same way it did not change it for log. This might be because we need to import the functions. Again, if this is the case, I'm going to leave this till after the break. And okay, yeah, let's just do the minimum and maximum one, and then we're off for a break. Okay. So minimum, and let's say we give it a list of 10, 18, 3, 9, 26. Okay. So what it returns is a 3, which was the smallest number in the list. The same way we do a max, and let's use the same list. Okay. So 10, 18, 3, 9, and 26. And it returned us the maximum or the highest value in that list. Okay, so these may be very simple functions as themselves, but they can give you a lot of power actually when you're working with big numbers or with data sciences, because that makes it a lot easier to compare large values. Okay, so I was wrong about the absolute value. I was mixing it up with something else. I think I've forgotten my maths completely. So the absolute value is not the value of the actual whole number. It's actually the value of the whole. It can be a float, it can be an integer, but it just has to be a positive. So it's essentially the distance. If you're, for example, working on a graph or on XY coordinates, so it's essentially the distance from the 0, 0 coordinate. Okay, so it would give you any value back without the sign, essentially. So if it was a negative value, it's going to take out the negative sign and give it back to you. So let's say, for example, we have a value z minus 25. And then we do ABSZ, so it's going to give us a 25. So the absolute essentially means that it's going to return it without its sign. So if it's a negative, it's going to turn it into a positive. If it's a positive, it's going to stay a positive, but it's essentially going to return it without a sign. It can be a float, it can be an integer. So okay, so I'm sorry about that. Please correct it in your notes if you took any. The absolute is not a whole number. It can be a float. So it can be a decimal number or a whole number, but it's essentially without a negative sign. Okay. So now for the other functions that we were not able to do. So for example, when I wrote log, you would notice that like when I wrote ABS, it converted into a purple string. So that means that it's an inbit function that it recognizes. But when I write log, it does not recognize it. The same way, when I write square root, it does not recognize it. And for some of you, if you're using an older a version of Python, it might not recognize some of these as well, because it comes, these come as updates on each version. So like we did an import on the random function because we couldn't use it without importing it. Some functions are built in, like I said, and some functions are out there, but we need to kind of ask Python for them, or we need to, call onto them before we can use them. So you can either call onto each function as you use it, or you can call onto, so use the import function, and there's a class by the name of path, or a module by the name, math, not path, math. So this essentially contains all of the maths functions. So if you do this and you don't get an error, it means that you have successfully imported math. And now what you can do is you can do math dot log, and then you do x, and it's going to return the value of the log of x. Okay, the same way you can do a log base 2 of x, and it's going to return the value. We're going to try the square root function now, and it should be there. So math dot square root, and x. So it gave a value of a square root. You can also do, let's say, to know that it's doing it correctly, let's say we do a square root of 16, and it returns a 4. Okay, so once you've imported the math module or the math class, there's lots of functions in there that you can use. You can use the sine and the cos and the tan if you're working with those. And you can also print values of, there are some absolute values in maths. Let's say like the value of pi. I believe this is how you would print it, but math.pi, and it would give you the value of pi. Generally, when we're using pi, we just use it as 3.142, but this is the actual whole value up to 15 decimal spaces, of course, of pi. Okay, So if you want absolute values of anything, for example, there's a value for epsilon. So you get values for these as well. They're inbuilt into the math function. So if you don't know beforehand what might be inbuilt into your version of Python, what you can simply do is before you start working on any of the math functions, you import the math class or the math module, and then you can use them. Okay. Now, because math is a small, it's a small 4-letter word. So it's easier to type it every time, because you notice that we have to type math and then dot and then the name of the function, right? But let's say we want to be lazy and we don't want to write the whole maths, the 4 letters. We can also import it as just, a single letter. This may be helpful when you're working with other modules, because some of the modules have very long names. So you don't want to have to type them again and again. So for that, you would have to do import math as, let's say, M. Okay. So what this does is it's imported maths, and it's going to give us its usability as M. So you can do math as well. Again, you can do math square root, let's say 25 now. Okay. But you can also do M dot square root 25, and it gives you the same value. Okay. So if you want to be lazy and if you don't want to type the whole thing over and over again, what you can do is you can assign it a single.
Teacher, I have a question.
Yeah.
So I think, teacher, you're trying to explain that instead of writing the 4 letters math, you can just write M, a shortcut for math. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But for that you will have to tell Python.
Oh yeah. Okay. I understand. You have to import also. So yeah, like you tell the computer that math can also be written as M. Teacher,
Yes.
Another question. If you do like import math as D, if you do D dot square root of 25, will the answer be 5?
Yes, it will be. Let's try that. Okay. So import math as D. Okay, and then we do D dot square root 25. Okay, so it's essentially anything that you want to import. It's your choice. You can import it as M, as D, as X, as Y, anything, as long as it's not the same as a variable that you're already using. Okay, so this is helpful when you're working with modules that have very long names. Since math is just 4 characters, you can simply use it as it is. But again, this is the kind of the lazy way to do it. Okay, so now we're going to move on to strings in Python. So, like I already said, and as we've used them as well, so a string is simply a series of characters, and it's anything inside of quotes. So the quotes can be double quotes or single quotes. And this is a flexibility because then it allows you to add quotes within the string as well. And we're going to see an example of that as well. Okay, and then there's lots of functions that you can apply to strings. I'll go through these one by one and then show you how they work on the shell before I move on to the other ones. Okay, so like the first one, if you want to display a single, so for example, if you saved a string into a variable, let's say A, and then you want to see what the third character or what the fourth character in that string is, or what the last character in that string is, what you do is you put it as an index in the square brackets. So if you want to find out what the first character is, you would be using an index 0, because we need to remember that in coding, indexes always start at 0. So when we're working with normal numbers, we're going to start at 1 and count from 1 onwards. But when we're working with indexes in codes, we're always starting at 0. So the first position would be 0. The first character of a string would be 0. The second character would be a 1. The third would be a 2, and so on. Okay. So we can use that to identify a specific character within a string. And then we can also use the same kind of syntax to display part of a string. So you give it, this is also called the splicing or the slicing operator. So you give it the start character and the end character. So you want to know what comes between 3 and 8 indexes, okay? And it's going to show you or give you as an output whatever that is. And there's many variations of this command, and I'm going to open up the shell now. We're going to put in a string, and then we're going to look at all of the variations of this command, okay? Would be a good idea if you can, follow this first and maybe note it down somewhere, and then try doing it on your own later. Okay, so let's say we have a string. I'll keep it as A because it's A in the examples as well. And let's say we do okay. So I'm going to write the string again. Okay, welcome to Python week 2. Okay, so I'm saving this string into a variable A. Okay, and now we're going to work on this variable. So the functions that we saw so far were accessing, individual characters within our string. So let's say we want to see what the fourth character is. So if you want to see the fourth character, it's going to be at an index 3, because again, we start indexing at 0. So if you want to see the fourth character, we'll put in an index value of 3. So it gives us a C. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the fourth character, which was a C, we can find it out by writing A and within square brackets 3. Now, it takes a while to get used to the indexing and how it starts at 0 because we're not used to it in the real world. But it simply essentially means that whatever you want a value for, the index is going to be -1 of that. Okay. So for example, the 12th character would be at an index 11, okay, which is a P. Okay, now let's see, we want to see a part of the string. So for that, we give it 2 arguments. So we start at, let's say, 0, and we want to see the first 7 characters, okay, which means it's going to start at 0 and go up to 6. Okay, no, it's giving you 6 characters. I'm sorry. It's not going to give you the 7th character. Okay. So what this does is, what this means is that you're starting at index 0 and you're going up to index 7. So it's going to give you everything before 7. Does that make sense? Also, like if you want to display, for example, the whole string, okay, you can either display it simply as A, or you can do A and then, empty arguments, essentially. So no start and no end, just this, and it gives you the whole string. Of course, it makes more sense to simply write it as A and not do this, but this is just something that you can also do if you like. Similarly, if you want to see, let's say, the last 5 characters or 6 characters of a string. So what you do is you don't give it a start point, but you give it an end point. I'm sorry. Was this and 5? No. Okay, I'm mixing this up. Give me a second. I'm sorry again, since I don't use this very commonly, I don't work with strings at all. In fact, I work with numbers. So this is something that I'm mixing up. Let me see what's happening here. Okay, yes, we'll need to look at another function to be able to display the last 5. I'll tell you that in a bit because it's on the next slide, so I don't want to confuse you right now. Okay, so what we did with this was, if you saw what I did here, let's say I do a -4 here. What this does, it subtracts the last 4 characters, the last 5 characters, the last 6 characters.
I know what it means, teacher. You said that A is equal to welcome to Python week 2, and A minus 4 is equal to the loss of 4 words, which means that it will be we.
So it's going to take in the spaces and the exclamation marks as indexes too. Okay, so it's going to count those as well. Okay, so essentially what we're doing here is that we're telling it that we want to display the whole string minus the last 4 characters or minus the last 5 characters. Okay. And again, this essentially means the same as starting to that point. So we can either do this or this, and this should give us the same result. And if you want to find, the middle of a string, so let's say we do 5 to 10. Okay, so it's giving us everything between these indexes. Does that make some sense? Yes, okay, good. We're going to go back to the...
Sorry, my mic was...
No worries. We're going to go back to the slides and look at some more functions and then apply those as well. Okay, so Then there's also ways in which you can concatenate or basically join two strings together. And I believe we did this in the last lesson as well.
Ma'am, I have a question.
Yes.
Teacher, ma'am, what is the sign for a concatenation?
Plus sign.
Oh, okay.
So essentially the same way that we did this in the last lesson as well. So we can use the plus and the multiplication or basically the steric to work with strings as well. Okay, so we can join two strings together using the plus sign, or we can print multiple copies of a string using the steric sign. We're going to try and do that on the shell as well. Also, sometimes what we want is that we want to add, let's say, a new line or an enter. A new line essentially means enter, or a tab, or some special characters into a string. Okay, so we can do that by using an escape sequence. And an escape sequence in Python is essentially a slash. So a backslash is used as an escape sequence, and it tells the compiler that anything after this, it's supposed to consider it not as a character in a string, but rather than as what it means essentially. So a slash n would mean a new line, a slash t would mean a tab space, a slash backslash again would mean a backslash, a slash single quote would mean that you want to put in a single quote over there, and a slash double quote would mean that you want to put in a double quote in there. We're going to experiment with these on the shell as well, so don't worry. Okay, and then there's some more string functions. For example, length. So it returns the length of a string. Okay. Then,
ma'am, I have a question.
yes.
For it's like writing length, do you have to write like length and then like the what is the thing after length?
It's brackets, so it's an open bracket.
Can you write length then brackets?
So instead of len, the whole word length?
Yeah, can you write that? Will it still work?
No, it would not work, because within Python, this function has this particular name. So it has to be name, yeah, and it has to be in lowercase. So if you write it in uppercase, it's going to give you an error. Okay, so this function returns the length of a string. Then there's the strip function, which essentially what it does is removes any of the white spaces from the beginning and the end of the string. Okay, so it's not going to remove the spaces inside of the string, but just spaces on the beginning and the end of the string. We're going to do an example of that as well. Then there's an is digit, which essentially returns true if the string is all digits. And if it has some digits and some alphabets, it's going to return it as a false. Then there's is alpha, which returns true if all the strings, all the characters are alphabets. Then it starts with and ends with function, which basically you give it an input and you ask it if your string starts with that input. And if it starts with it, it's going to give you a true. If it does not start with it, it's going to give you a false. The same way the ends with function works, but it essentially checks the ends of the string. Okay, so we're going to work on these on the shell, and then we're going to look at the other functions. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so you see the shell now?
No, I can still see more string functions, Khwarizmi Science Society, len, strip, iDRAC. That screen. The screen you were teaching us on before. I can't see your shell.
Okay, let me show you. Okay, I'll share it again. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so we're going to use the same string for now, A, which is welcome to Python week 2. And let's check the length of the string. Okay. So I believe you can do it. Again, I'll have to check if it works this way, because in different versions of Python, it's going to work differently. So it can either work this way, or it gives an error, or what you can do is length and then A. Okay, so I'm going to write it both ways, because for some of you, if you're using an older version, it might work this way and not this way. Okay, so it's just a difference, a slight difference in syntax.
Ma'am, I think I understand why after you write like len and then A, because it says the length of A, and A is equal to welcome to Python week 2. And I think like all the letters in welcome to Python week 2 is equal to 25. All of the letters.
Yes,
Ah,
that's
okay, okay.
okay. So it's given you the length of the string. Okay. So now, because our string does not have any white spaces before and after, so we're not going to try and use the strip function, because it's going to return the same. But we can try the isDigit function. Again, I'm going to try it both ways and see which one works on this version. So we write it as isDigit. Sorry. A dot isDigit. And it works this way. Okay. Let's see if it works the other way as well. isDigit A. It doesn't work this way. Okay. So it gets a little confusing. Yes, I know, because sometimes there's a different syntax for the same kind of commands. But Python has been improving on this, and newer improvements and newer syntax keeps coming in with every version. So it's just a matter of remembering really which one works for you. Okay, so in this case, this worked. So A, which was the name of our variable that had the string, dot isDigit. So we're checking if it has digits. Since it does not have any digits, and in fact it has alphabets, what it does is it returns as false. Now, what do you think would return if we did is alpha? So before I press enter, I want some input from all of you. Okay, what do you think would return? Would it return true or false if we checked it for alphabets?
Teacher, I think it would say true.
Okay.
Because
What about
I
the
think
rest? Uh-huh.
I think A, because A is welcome to Python week 2 dot wait, I can't see anything. Let this move first.
Okay, yeah, A is basically welcome to Python week 2.
I think it would be true. Teacher, what did you write? A dot something.
A dot is alpha, and then open bracket and close bracket. I'll move this up a bit. Okay. So some of you are saying true, some of you are saying false. Let's see what.
It's false, teacher. It's false.
Yes, it is false for two reasons. One, because it's not all alphabets. There's the number 2 in there. So it was automatically going to return false. But also, if we, let's say if we use another string and just do welcome to Python.
Ma'am, do you know what I remember from this?
Yes.
This is just like my school equations in math. Like A is equal to 32. We have to find if A is equal to 32. A is equal to B plus D. What is like B plus D? It's just like this.
Yes.
You're telling that A. It's just like A is equal to welcome to Python week 2, A dot length. You're telling the length of A, which is what, like 25 letters or 24. It's just like that.
Yes. Yes, that's true. Okay, so now we made another string, B, which is just welcome to Python. So it does not have the number 2. What do you think would return now? if we do b dot is alpha, would it return true or false?
A dot is alpha. It will be false.
False. Okay, why would it be false?
Can I
It is
explain?
false. Yes, yes.
Teacher, it would be false because there in A is equal to welcome to Python week 2. They're not all letters. The number 2 is not a letter. That's why it would be false. Not everything is letters. So like
No,
he would make it false.
no, but the other one. You see, I wrote another string b
Is equal to
equals
welcome to
welcome to
Python.
Python. It does not have
Yeah,
a number.
now it's a string and like I think it will be true.
Yes, because, but it's still false. Why is it? Yes, as Fatma said in the chat, it's
Okay.
because of the exclamation mark.
Okay.
And also because of the spaces, really.
Okay.
Because the spaces are not considered a number, right? They're essentially special characters. The same way an exclamation mark is not, or an alphabet, really. So it's not an alphabet or a number. The spaces and the
It will be
exclamation mark.
false.
So it would still be false. Okay? Does that make sense?
Okay.
If we did this, if we took out the exclamation mark, if we took out the spaces, and then did is alpha, it should return true now. See? Okay. So let's check something else. Let's see, let's work with the start and the end, starts with and ends with functions. Okay. So if, let's say we want to check if B starts with welcome or just well, okay, it should return true. But if we do B starts with Python, it would return false because the string B does not start with the word Python. It starts with welcome, which is essentially well. Okay. We can experiment with the ends with as well. So using the same, let's do an ends with well. And
Teacher, I don't understand why when you write B is alpha, why it's true. Why is it true when you write B dot is alpha?
okay, because here we change the value for B and we remove the exclamation mark and we remove the spaces.
Oh, okay, I understand now. You remove the spaces
Yeah,
and
the
you
spaces
remove
and
the
the
exclamation
exclamation
marks.
mark.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
There are no
Understood.
special characters, it's just alphabets now.
Teacher, there's the quotation marks, the double one. Those aren't known as characters.
No, because they are not a part of the string.
Oh, okay.
They're just to tell Python that we're writing a string, but they're not a part of the string.
Okay.
Anything inside of the quotation marks is a part of the string, but not the quotation marks themselves.
Okay. Okay.
So now we did a B dot ends with a well and it returned false because it does not end with a well. And then we did it with Python and it returned true. Okay, because our string ends with Python. So this can essentially work on any length of strings, really. Okay, any questions so far?
Not a question, but I think why you wrote B dot ends with, like in the sentence welcome to Python. Python is like the end of the sentence of
Yes.
B, which is equal to welcome to Python.
Yeah. So B dot ends with Python returns true.
Okay.
Okay.
But teacher, if it was B dot alpha ends with, will it come like N?
It could is alpha is a different thing, and ends with is a different thing.
Yes, but like if you can you like combine them? Is alpha and ends with? Can you like combine them?
You can combine them, but for that you would use the logical operators that we talked about, the and, the or, and the not. We will be working with those in the next lesson. Okay, so now maybe let's try concatenating two strings. So let's say we have a string X, which is ABC, and a string Y, which is XYZ. And we do X plus Y. What this does is it prints it together. Okay. If we have another string, let's say ABC, ABC / N. Let's see what this does. So we want to print Z and Y. So you notice what happened here. Because we put a /n at the end of ABC, what it meant was that for Perl, it means that after ABC, it's supposed to press the enter key essentially. So it's supposed to go to a new line. So now, like we're writing text in a notepad and we press the enter key, it goes into a new line. The same way, /n means new line. Okay, the same way, let's try and change the value of Z and do a /t, which is essentially a tab. So a tab space is bigger than an actual space. I believe it's equal to 4 spaces. And now try and print Z plus Y. So it gives us an ABC and then a tab space and then the XYZ, which is the second string. So this tab space was part of Z. The same way, this new line was a part of Z over here. So the same way, we use a plus for concatenation. We can print multiple copies of a string by using the asterisk. So let's say we want to print 3 copies of X. So what it's going to do is it's going to print ABC, ABC, ABC. So the same string 3 times. Okay, we can try the same with Z. So let's say 4 times Z. And what it does is it prints the tab every time that it prints Z because it's part of Z now. Yeah. So ABC tab, then ABC tab space, then ABC tab space, and then ABC. And there's a tab space at the end as well that you can't see here, obviously, but it exists there. We're going to do one more with the double quotes, the escape sequence, and then we can move on to the next part of the lesson. Okay, so let's say we want to write a string. Okay, what should I use? I'll use this as a, variable name. Welcome. And okay, so I'm going to write a string here. Let's say I told my friend that Python is my favorite language. Okay, so
I can't see what you're writing. I can't see what you're writing.
okay, can the rest of you see, or none of you can? Please let me know in the chat. Okay, Muhammad Azam, I think you have something on your screen that's blocking your view. Do you have something on your screen that's blocking your view?
I think it's because I'm not in like super, like what do you call it? Full mode. Now I'm in full mode. I can see now. Okay. Well,
Okay, yeah, so that was the reason. Okay, so we're writing a string by the name of welcome, which says, I told my friend that Python is my favorite language. But what we want to do is that we want to write Python within inverted commas. Now we can't do it like this, okay? Because then it considers this to be something else. So what we need is we need the escape sequence, which is this. Okay, so the backslash that I put in here is the escape sequence. And you put it in before the double quotes so that it tells the compiler that you want to print the double quotes as is as well. Okay, and now when we display welcome, it's going to put this within quotes. Okay, does that make sense?
yes.
Okay, Fatma, so I'm going to copy this again and show you how it's going to give an error if we don't use the escape sequence. So if we did this, it would consider this first part as a string, and then it would try and look for this as a variable, and then the second part is a string, okay? And it's going to give us a syntax error, because if it was a variable, there should have been a comma in there, okay? So basically what it does is it considers everything within quotes as a string. So for it, when you added a quote in here before the P, it said that it thought that it was essentially an end for the other double quote. Am I making sense? Okay. So it did not consider it as a start of a new double quote, but basically उसने ये Python को ये समझ आया कि हमने जो शुरू में एक double quote use किया था, उसको हमने यहाँ पे close किया. और फिर Python के बाद जो हमने यूज किया वो हमने एक नया डबल कोट शुरू किया और उसे क्लोज किया. तो दरमियान वाला it cannot make sense of. Okay, which is why it gives an error. तो अगर हमने if we want to tell it not to consider it उसका part, तो फिर we use the escape sequence, and the escape sequence in Python is the backslash.
Yes.
Okay, so there's more functions that you can use with strings as well. The same way that we used is alpha and the is digit and ends with, starts with. There's also the find function, the replace function, the split function. Okay, so like we were saying, there's more functions that you can use. Like there's the find function. So the same way that you did the ends with and the starts with, what you can do is you can give it an argument and ask it to find whether it is there in your string or not. The same way you can replace part of a string. I'm not going to do these on the shell. You can do these on your own, and then if you run into any problems, we can, work on those. The same way a split function works. So if you notice in this string, there's lots of full stops, or you can use a string that has commas, or you can use a string that has question marks, all of them. And then you can try and split it using those. So it essentially then saves them as a list. So all of those, so the string, let's say it had 5 words separated by full stops, or 5 words separated by question marks. So if you use whatever you were using to split it, for example, in this case, a full stop, what it does is it saves it as a list. So now it has no as the first part of the list, and okay as the second part of the list, and y as the third part of the list. So it's going to, every time it comes across whatever argument you gave it here, like a full stop, it's going to essentially cut it from there. So it's going to cut or split this string from there, and then consider it a new string, and then cut it from there and consider it a new string. The same way you can change the case for your text that you're using, or the string that you're using. For example, if you want to display the whole string as a lowercase, or if you want to display the whole string as an uppercase, so you can use string.lower to print it, or string.upper to print it as an uppercase. Okay, I've given some examples here. I've taken them from, there's a website that I've often used for Python, and it actually, you can use it for a lot of languages, by the name of Geeks for Geeks. And I took these images as screenshots from the same website. And what it does is it's basically showing you how you can convert the string to a lowercase and the kind of output that you get, and how you can convert a string to an uppercase and the kind of output that you get. Okay. The same way that you do that you did ends with and begins with, or is alpha and is digit, you can use is upper and is lower to check if your string is in uppercase or in lowercase. So if the whole string is in uppercase, it's going to return true. If it's not, it's going to return false. Even if a sum of the alphabets are in uppercase, if the whole string is not in uppercase, it's going to return false. It's the same way that it works for is lower. Okay, so you check your string to see if it's in lowercase or not. So if it's in lowercase, the whole string, it's going to return true, like Geeks for Geeks in the second part. And if the whole string is not in lowercase, it's going to return false. Okay, so there's lots of, again, these are just some of the functions that you can perform. The same way that I showed you just some of the functions that you can perform on numbers, these are just some that you can perform on strings. There's hundreds of functions really out there that you can use. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and look at some of the errors that you might come across. Now, I'm not going to look at all of the errors that you might come across, because when you're working with functions and lists and other things, and there's different kinds of errors that you see, but we're just going to look at the errors that you would see when you're working with whatever you've done so far. Okay, We've seen a few of these, in fact, while we were working on the shell as well. So it's essentially the syntax errors that you run into, like we did when you tried the print command as well. So one, you have to be very careful when you're working with brackets, and again, when you're working with quotes, single quotes or double quotes, that if you're starting a bracket, you should always close it at some place in the code, okay? So you can't just open a bracket and never close it. Whenever you open a bracket, you need to close it before you run the code. It can be a square bracket, it can be a round bracket or the parenthesis. But whenever you start it, it needs to close at some point. Okay. The same way, whenever you start a quote, a single quote or a double quote, it has to end as well. So you can't just start a quote and then forget about it. It has to end for you to be able to run it. Otherwise, it's going to give you an error. Then there's also the misspelled variable or function names, because like I said earlier, and as I believe Kiramat mentioned earlier as well, Python is case sensitive. So for example, all of these functions that you saw we were using, all of these were in lowercase. If you accidentally, turn on the caps lock key on your keyboard before you were typing, and you typed in all of them as capitals, it would give you an error, because Python is case sensitive and all of its inbuilt functions are in the lowercase. The same way, if you maybe assigned a variable x some value and it was a small x, and then when you're printing it, you're trying to print it as a capital X, it's going to give you an error. It's going to say that it cannot find that variable because it never existed. For it, small x existed, but it does not mean the same as a capital X. Okay, so you have to be very careful about what case you're using and how you're spelling anything. Okay, so you have to be careful about function names. Like Muhammad Azam asked earlier, you cannot use the whole length and the brackets. You have to use len and the brackets, because that's how it's built into Python. Okay, if you use the whole length, it's going to give you an error. Okay, also I mentioned this earlier as well, a lot of the syntax errors come in when you use equals to instead of double equals to. So you need to know the difference. Python uses the single equals to sign to assign a value, like we've been doing a equals 10, x equals a string, and it uses the double equals to for comparison. Okay, so you have to be careful about what you're doing, and if within your code you mix it up, that instead of using a single equals to assign, you try and use a double equals to assign, and you use a single equals to compare, it is going to give you an error and it's not going to run the script. Okay. Another error, this isn't part of syntax errors, but I just added it in here. It's an input output error. So essentially what this means is that it gives you an error when you're trying to open a file that does not exist either on the whole system, or it does not exist in the location where you told Python that it would exist. Okay, so you probably won't get this right now because we're not working with files right now. But when you're trying to open a file, if it can't find it in that location, or if it can't find it at all, it's going to give you an error. And then it's going to not run the code. Okay. So now we just have 15 minutes. We're going to look at saving and running Python scripts. So this is, I believe, the last part of it. And we can go over this again in the next lesson as well, if you feel that this is something that we need to revisit. But it is pretty simple, really. Okay. So far, what we've been doing is been using the idle shell to run everything on Python, right? But what we don't know is that idle has two modes. So there's the interactive mode and there's the script mode. We've been using the interactive mode so far, where essentially it gives you the output there and then. So you write a command, you press enter, it gives you the output, okay? Or it runs it instantly, okay? But this way you can't save the commands that you're running, okay? Once you close the shell, they've all disappeared. So what you might want to do is that you want to write it in the form of a script. So you want to write it in the form of a file that you can save, and then you can run it from there, okay? So this is called the script mode, in which you write a script or you write a piece of code and then you run it. And you should always remember that, of course, when you're working with idle, it's going to by default save it with a py extension, which is the extension for Python. But if you're working even with Notepad, you can write the scripts there, but it's not going to save it as a py, because the default for Notepad is .txt. So it's going to save it as .txt, and then you won't be able to run it as a Python command, okay? As a Python script, really, not a command, as a script. So always remember to check that you're saving all your scripts with the py extension, which is the extension for Python, okay? We're going to go through the slides and then we're going to make an actual file, or I'll show you an actual file, and then we're going to run it, okay? So essentially what you do is the same way that you opened idle. Open idle, and if you've already opened and on your machines, you go to file and you click on new file. And what it's going to do is it's going to open up a file by the name of untitled. Okay, so this here is the script mode. The first one, the shell, was the interactive mode, and this new file that it opened is the script mode. And what you do is you write any code in there, okay, and you click run to run it. Now, if you haven't saved it so far, if you just wrote the code and tried running it, it's going to give you an error and it's going to say that you should save it before you run. Source must be saved, okay to save, question mark, and it's asking you to save it. When you press OK, it's going to ask you where you want to save it. And then you can select whichever folder you want to save it to. And like I said, for idle, the default is going to be py, or the Python extension. But if you're working with a regular Notepad or something, you would have to write .py at the end to save it as a Python file. Okay. And then once saved it, it's going to run it. Now, I'm going to show you this on the shell, so it's easier to understand. Okay, so I'm not going to do a new file. I'm going to do open, okay, because I've already written and saved it in scripts. And so I saved it as welcome underscore week2.py. And what I wrote in it was the same way that I was writing in the shell, x equals welcome to week 2 of Python, then print x, and then print the length of your string as length of x. Okay, so this is a function that we already did. And if you want to run it, what we do simply is go to run. You can see it at the top of your script file, run, and say run module. Now, if you notice here, before it ran it, it restarted the shell. It says restart, and then it gives a different path. So I don't know if you can go to the top of the shell. Yes, we can. So when you started the idle shell before, it started in the Python directory that it was installed in. Okay, that was most likely on the C drive. But the script that I want to run, it's in this location. It's in the D drive in the KSS folder. Within it, it's a KSS Python folder, and then a scripts folder, and then the file. So you did not need to give it the path, because when you ran it from here, it automatically found the path itself. So it's changed idle to that path, it's restarted it, gone to that path, and then run it. Okay. And if you see, it's giving you the same output that it would have if you had written it directly in this shell. Okay. So x equals welcome to week 2 of Python, then print x, it's printed x here, and then it's printed the length of your string is equals to and the length of x. Okay, does this make sense? So this way you can essentially write any and all of your code into a script file and then run it from here. Yes, so Python comments, indentation, and statements. I think we should not rush through this. So we'll take this up in the next class. And I'll go through the exercises so that you know what you're supposed to do. Okay, we're going to leave out the last exercise, the 5th one, because it has to do with comments. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to rush through it. So you can do the first 4 exercises, try them. Also try all the functions that I've taught you today. And if you run through any errors, syntax errors, any other errors, declaring variables or naming variables or anything, that you can get back to me. You can either email me, you can leave a message in the Google Classroom. Those of you who haven't joined it yet, please do join it. And we will be sharing these slides as well. Okay, so the first exercise is assign a message to a variable and then print it. This is very simple. You did it in the last lesson as well, and you're just supposed to do it again. You're supposed to basically assign a string to a variable or save a string as a variable and then print it. Okay, then use a variable to represent a person's name and print a message to that person. So something like, hi Aisha, how are you feeling today? So what you're essentially going to do is you're going to, let's say, use a variable name, name equals Aisha, and then print this. So what I want you to do is not write Aisha directly in the print statement, but instead use the name of the variable in the print statement. So it has to be hi, and then the name variable, and then how are you feeling today? Okay. So the same way that we use commas to separate out different things in a print statement, I've done it before with you in the last lesson, in this lesson as well. So it should be pretty simple. Okay. Then find a famous quote and print the quote with the name of the person. Okay, for this, you would be using the escape sequence. So what I want you to do is I want you to print the quote within inverted commas and then the name of the person as is. Okay. So you will need, in order to be able to print the inverted commas or print the double quotes, you would need to use the escape sequence, which is a backslash. Okay. And then apply any 4 of the string functions that you learned today on your own name. So save your name in a variable and then apply any of those. You can use the is lower or is upper or ends with or starts with, or just convert it to lower or uppercase, or find the length of it, or anything really. So apply any 4 of the string functions onto your name and save the output. Okay. So this is about it for today's class. Thank you for your time today. I'm sorry it was probably a lot to take in today. Lots of little stuff. If you have a problem with the speed that I'm working with, the feedback would be appreciated again. Let us know. If you think we should go faster, let us know as well. And thank you so much again. You have been a wonderful audience, really.